I'm going to share with you a wonderful little tool called the discipline box that's just been a blessing to our family when we introduce this. And you want to introduce a discipline box around the age of 6 and older. Now again, the discipline box will take the place of timeout in most of your situations. Now the discipline box can be a jar or a box or whatever, a shoe box. And what you do is put on there, get little pieces of paper, and you write on those little pieces of paper chores that are age appropriate. So if you have a 6 and an 8-year-old, that they could use the same box. You know, dust a certain room, vacuum the living room, wash a mirror, sweep the back patio. Little pieces of paper where you put these little things on that they could accomplish. You fold it up and you put it in the box. And so when something takes place, let's say disrespect, and now your new consequence is a consequence box. Now I say to implement it between 6 and 7 years old because when they're younger, especially boys, they don't get it. Little girls, by the time they're 5, their cognitive skills are usually a couple years ahead of us, the boys. They understand the discipline box. When Katie hit 6, she said she wanted one. She saw her brothers doing it, and she said, I want to be big like them. I want my own box. So 6-year birthday, that was part of her gift. We gave her a consequence box. And they'll help you put it together. What's so fun about this, parents, when they sit down and they're helping you with the things to put on those pieces of paper, they're not thinking about themselves getting it. They're thinking about their brother or sister getting it. They can be pretty vicious about what they do. So you put these little pieces of papers in there, and so when there's a consequence, you go grab the box, you go, hey, pull. They reach in, completely random, they pull it out, and whatever it is, they do it now. Now, you can intercede if one of two things happen. If someone just pulled that one and did it, because when they pull it, they put it right back in, they go do the chore. Someone might have just did that one. They might have just done that one. Say, no, pull another one. All right? So, again, you can't say, pull 3. You did a bad one that time. No. If it's one consequence or discipline for that measure, that's what it is. They reach and they pull out completely random. So you might want them to pull 10. You might want them to get a harder one because what they did, they're really on your nerves. But you can't do anything. You let them pull. That's what they do. They put it back in the box. They go do it immediately. What happens if they say, I'm not going to do the chore? What happens then? Motivator. You're getting it. You sure? You motivate them, and if they still don't accept the discipline, they go in their room and they sit there until they're ready to come out and do the discipline. Don't let them out of that discipline. Remember, punishment doesn't change. It doesn't change or transform, doesn't educate, doesn't create character. You go to your room, sister, when you're ready to come out and do the discipline, then your life starts over. But follow through with the punishment. They must finish the discipline also. We did this, Nick one day pulled the box, and which he did often, and he pulled the box out and it said, clean all the toilets. My wife and I looked at each other, and I think we had a house that had 3 at that time, and we looked at each other and went, clean the toilets? I didn't put that in there. We're kind of doing this thing, And Nick goes, clean the toilets, man, And so my wife grabbed those big rubber glove things, that little basket, marched him in the bathroom, started showing him how to do the first one, and then he was off and running. And I looked in this box. She came back in the kitchen. I go, man, look, there's twice as much as there used to be. So we dumped them out. We started going through them. Like, man, there's some hard ones in here. And pretty soon we came across one that said, do all of Justin's chores. So I go, Justin! He comes out of his room. See, 2 days earlier, Nick was being a jerk, bless his little heart, and Justin wanted to get back at Nick. So how do you do it? He wouldn't fix that box. Justin got like a discipline every 4th day. Nick got 10 a day. So it was his best way to get back. Now, we did not discipline Justin for that, not at all. We thought it was quite funny. Matter of fact, half of the stuff he put in there, we left in there. He was very creative. But I encourage you, put the box up high, especially when you first implement this. Things will happen to that box. If it doesn't disappear altogether, what will happen is all the hard things will disappear. If you want to put in there grace or mercy, so if they pick that one, they had mercy, that's okay, that's fun. That's all right to do. Now don't come up to me and go, should we have that as a parent? No. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you need to have a discipline box, okay, or discipline yourself. I've had parents come up, gosh, we should have that. We should pull. No, don't do that, all right? I just, interesting sometimes when people, how did you think of that one? Anyway. Now, if you have children that are 13 and older, when you come home and you want to implement a box or a jar, they think that, like, what is this childish baby? So now my kids grew up with the consequence box, so up until they were 18, Nick was still pulling. He was disrespectful. It didn't happen too often, but when he would, disrespectful, I mean, hey, Nick, go pull. There was no big deal. He was good at going, well, what if I just wash your car instead? Fine with me. He loves washing cars. Hey, fine with me. I'll let you choose that one. Anyway, so for kids that are 12 and older, 13 and older, use a consequence list. Same exact concept, but a list. You can see a little example there, 1 through 10 of things they can do. I remember that's age appropriate. And if you have several teenagers, they can all use the same list. They don't have their own separate list, their own list. And you have wash mom's car, wash dad's car, vacuum the inside of mom's car, wash 5 windows inside and out, and so on and so forth. These are chores that are over and above their normal chores. Mom, think of all those things you hate doing. All that spring cleaning stuff that you hate doing, put those on the list. Between 5 and 15 to 20-minute chores on this list. And so when they blow it, and the consequence list is the discipline for that subject matter, that rule, they go to that list, the next one on, they check it, and they go do it. And why you check it? Because obviously you're moving your way down the list. When you get to the bottom, what do? Start over. Okay, just have to clarify that. I've had people come and ask that. You start at the top again. And it's fun. And as you see it, when one of them gets a bad, ooh, you got the bad one, man. Now, obviously, if it's, go out and sweep the back patio and it's 9 o'clock at night, you have the choice. Okay, I want it done tomorrow before 3 o'clock, and or, no, pull one right, go to the next one on the list that you can do right now in the house. So but you can't go, no, what's the worst one on here that you hate? Oh, this one. Don't do that. Random, not how you feel, even though you want to give them 10, don't do that. Simple, great, practical tools of instilling training in your kid's heart and discipline. 4 to 8 years old. How many here are some 4, 8, 9-year-old kids? Okay, lots of you. During this time, children's personality really beginning to develop, come out. All children are different. Their temperaments and personalities are not the same, so don't compare them. As they get older, they will understand the difference between discipline and punishment much easier. Although most kids, by the time they're 3 to 5 years old, they got the concept. It's also important to allow some natural related consequences to occur. Let me give you an example. Okay, let's say, they're 8 years old and they got a bicycle. And you live on a dead-end street, and the dead-end street's a fine place to ride. But when you go off that dead-end street, it's a bad place. So you say to your son, okay, you can ride all you want right here. But if you cross that line, see that telephone pole and that right over there? If you cross that line without asking Mom and I and getting our permission, you will lose the privilege of that bike for a week. A related consequence. So choose wisely. If we ever see you go past that line, without a permission, that bike's going to be put away and locked up for a week. A related consequence. You can be creative here, but it applies. Don't say, you know what, I'm going to take away the phone, or I'm going to take away your most favorite truck you like playing with. What's that got to do with riding your bike down the street? You got to be creative here. And why I used to have all my rules listed out, and what people did was just take my rules and Xerox them and follow that. I don't want to do that. I'm just giving you some ideas here. Because I want you to seek the Lord and pray, okay, God, what rules do we need for the kids that you gave us? And so coming up with some related consequences are very helpful. One of the rules I want to cover here is no fighting and verbal arguing. How many have that kind of stuff going on? Yeah. And you walk in there, he did that, she did this, he did that, she did this. You're then your judge and your jury, and you're trying to figure it out. Pretty soon you just get mad and scream, and then no one gets disciplined. Don't do that. If arguing and fighting is part of the rule, sometimes you don't know who started what, do you? You just can't figure it out. So you walk in the room and you say, all right, the next one he talks to each other, in the next 15 minutes, we'll get a consequence. You set the timer, And you can separate them in different areas of the house. That's okay. But you set that timer. The first one that talks to each other gets the pole. Don't get sucked into this. They'll wake up some days and they'll just want to ruin your life all day long, Mom. They just want to manipulate your time and make you miserable. So they'll fight all day long. Don't let them suck you into that. You walk in there, okay, 15 minutes. After you do something like this, most of the time they're best friends afterwards, the kids. You set the timer, walk away. And when one of them runs in and goes, he stuck his tongue out me, you go do a consequence. Why? He stuck his tongue out me. You should have been looking at him. Go get the other one. Come here. You go do a consequence too. Well, that's not fair. Life's tough. How about lying? No lying. You can have a rule. Here's a good one. If you lie and you get caught. You know, if one kid doesn't have a bat in his hand, the other one doesn't have a knot in the forehead, you really don't know who did what half the time. But if you get caught lying, it's double consequence. Period. Poor choice. If your consequence is the consequence list or the box or whatever else, they just go do 2 of them. Teach them not to lie. It doesn't work. It doesn't help. Makes things worse. Clean up your own messes. You come home when your kid's got the shoes there and the backpack there and the bread out and the peanut butter all over the counter and all the stuff kids do. The rule is clean up your own messes. You walk in the house, you see it there, you go, come here. Clean that up. And when you're done, go do a consequence. I'm not your maid. Now, we have clean up, keep your own room clean. We had to make the bed and keep the room clean before they went to school. Now, we could do that, but if your own room is not cleaned up, then don't expect your kids to do it, all right? I have many parents say, well, you know, that's their own domain. We just keep the door shut so no one sees their mess. Don't look upon it that way. Look upon it as this, a great training tool. The first time we said this to my kids, they go, well, we're not going to have time to pick everything up and make your bed, or whatever. I said, that's right. That's why you should have your room picked up before you go to sleep. So all thing you have to do in the morning is go with your sheets. Oh, that's hard. That was all 40 seconds. So if you had everything off the floor the night before you went to bed, you would have to sit down and pick up this pig spin around the house, would you? The room is a wonderful training tool for implementing these things. So again, clean up your own mess. If you blow it, there's a consequence, and you make them clean it up. Now, are there times when you walk in and you don't know who did it? I didn't do it, he didn't do it, and I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Don't sit there and, I know you did it. You know, sometimes you're not going to figure it out. Just clean it up. Believe me, you'll catch him again. It always happens. If the boundaries and discipline foundation has been laid during the first 9 years, the transition into adolescence will be smoother than if not. It is a good idea to plan to wean yourself and your children off spanking by the time they're 12 years old. Again, very seldomly, some strong-willed kids will need that type of motivation, but I really encourage you to start weaning yourself off that by then. And some kids, you can wean yourself off that even younger. I have found for punishment, effective punishment is work. Again, is the most powerful tool even for punishment. One of the things that Nick began to do when he hit 12 to 13 years old, he began to really challenge my wife's authority. He'd give her discipline, he'd go, He'd start arguing with her. And he's too big to spank. I have moms tell me all the time, when should I stop spanking? When you can't catch them. Okay? When they are just getting to the point where you're in a wrestling match, okay, you're past the time to spank. So what do I do then when my husband's not home and he's 9 years old and he's 6'2", and I give him a discipline, he won't do it? Life stops. Goes to his room, he stays there. What if he won't go in his room? When Dad gets home, you sit him down and say, son, what was the problem? Well, you know, I don't think this is fair, whatever. Really? Go do 2, and beginning Saturday morning, I'm going to give you 1 hour's worth of Saturday work for every time you don't listen to Mom. When I'm not here, son, I don't care how big you are. Mom is in control. I have relinquished my responsibility to her when I'm gone. You listen to her. I will motivate you. And with my son Nicholas, when he began to challenge my wife, I'd come home, and many times he was in his room because we said Nick would just go to his room. He didn't listen to Mom. He went to his room until I got home. Well, there was no challenge over even that. So I'd come home. My wife would tell me what happened. I'd go and sit down with Nick. What happened? He'd give me his side of the story, and okay, Nick, well, the reality is you went to door number 3. We told you that doesn't exist anymore. Go do 2 consequences. But that was happening almost like 2 or 3 times a week. So I had to implement Saturday work. And I started saying, okay, for every time you don't listen to mom, on top of your 2 disciplines, I'm going to implement, half-hour increments or 1-hour increments starting at 9 a.m. in the morning. Now, I always gave hours worth of work. I didn't say go work for an hour. You get one weed pulled. I say you weed from here to here. And if you're done in 15 minutes, great. If you take 4 hours, if you take all day, I don't care. Praise the Lord. Nick became a machine. He figured out, if I work fast and I work hard, I can get less than an hour's worth of work. That's right. That's right. You get that much done. That's how much work I'm giving you. It motivated him. He needed to listen. We never had to do that with Justin. Ever, ever, ever did we have to do anything like that to Justin. But some of those strong-willed mules, they do that. Now, when do you implement restriction? Many parents use restriction for everything. Restriction should be used, again, when they refuse discipline. Or there's a mistake they made out away from your care, like coming home on the wrong time. If you said be home at 6 and they come home at 6:30, oh, poor choice, next 3 days you ain't going nowhere. That's a related consequence. Since you don't have the self-control to choose wisely when you're out of our care, I'm going to pull back in this area. It relates to it. The other time to implement shutdown, we call it. We don't call it restriction. You shut down. There's no life, no TV, no friends, no nothing. No computer, nothing. Is when a child refuses discipline, at that moment, his life stops. Just like, again, mom, when you're at home and that child refuses discipline, his life stops. There's no TV, no phone, no nothing until he comes and accepts the discipline. If it takes 5 minutes or 5 days, what do you care? I've had kids, hold out in their room for days, and parents call me every day, he's still in there. This one mom said, she's going to die. And then we found out that her friends are coming around sneaking food through the window, So, hey, act like you got all the time in the world. We'll wait you out. We'll wait this out. You have no freedom. You want some cash? What? You're on shutdown, girlfriend. There ain't no cash flow happening. You want to ride where? No, you're here. Until you go do this discipline, well, this is ridiculous. I can't believe it either. For something that's going to take you 8 minutes, you've been in your room for 3 days. I can't figure it out, but if that's what you want, that's okay with me. The moment you accept your discipline, I'm okay. Life starts over. I'm not going to bring it up 3 days from now. But you first must do your discipline. The moment you do discipline, it starts over. We're all over. We're moving ahead. Simple. No screaming, yelling, threatening, anger. Will wait you out. I got nothing but time. You're here for 4 or 5 more years. Praise the Lord. Telephone privileges is an example. I want to encourage you in this area. I gave you some basic rules here. These are, again, for you just to look at and see if they apply to your home. But telephone privileges. When you have a kid that hits 13 years old and the phone's ringing off the hook with all the girls and boys calling, and you never see them anymore, and they're in their room, the answer to that problem is not giving them a phone in their room. That is not the answer. Because the enemy will use that and have them pull away from you prematurely. And pretty soon, you think they're out of your hair, but they're in there talking and getting emotionally involved or spending time with kids that they shouldn't be possibly. So having phone rules and boundaries is important, especially with the opposite sex. 13 to 18-year-old kids. There are many changes going on between age 13 and 15. Physically, they are growing, rapidly developing their sexuality and strength and increases and so on. Emotionally, they're becoming more independent. They are much more aware of the opposite sex. They begin to feel a need to be accepted by their peers, and they begin to develop close friendships. Okay, so lots of changes going on. Within the Understanding Teen tape series that we do really gets into these details, and we don't have time today to get into it. But it is important for you to educate yourself these changes. And so when these changes are taking place, they oftentimes begin to challenge your authority all over again. It's like the terrible twos coming back up again, but now they're, 100 pounds heavier, Here's some very important things not to compromise in during this season. Number one, respect toward both parents. Your authority, and the home. That means mouthing off at you, at the parents, bossing the other children. I have had to remind Nick this many times. Nick, we got 2 parents in this house. We don't need another one. And especially you disciplining Justin. Nah, I don't think so. Anyway, so you got to watch that. You got to watch them coming home. Hey, Dad, I'm going over to Jim's house, and I'll be on them. And they start telling you all these things. I'll be home about 10. You got to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa. Are you asking or are you telling me? What's the big deal? Well, let me explain. If you're telling me, then no, you're not going anyplace. If you're asking me, I'll think about it. It sneaks up on you. If you're not watching, it just happens. They just start telling you what they're going to do. It's a power struggle. It's okay. Don't get mad. That's normal. Don't get angry. Just deal with it. Are you asking or are you telling? If you're not asking, again, either rephrase it or you're not going. Wow, that's terrible. Fine with me. Be careful. Watch that. They start helping you out in your parenting. You need to say, hush, open your mouth again. That's disrespect. You can do a consequence every time you try to help me with your parenting. I don't need another parent. I don't need more conflicts stirring up in this house because you want to help me as a parent. Deal with those subject matters. Number 2, the morals and values that you have established within your home, including your children's personal interests and their pleasures. Again, music, TV programs, and other entertainment things. If you have a boundary, my son was in music, I told you. He's been in bands. He plays the piano. Music is a big thing to him. And we had a rule. You can have any music you want, but if it's not Christian, I had to read and approve the lyrics. That was a rule in our house. Has there been times we caught him with the poor music? Yes, we have. Let me tell you, my wife's going through his drawers, he finds a bunch of CDs at the bottom of his drawer. And we pull them up, and the neat thing is you get on the internet, look up these bands, and you can just see by the first picture that pops up what's all about these bands are about. And then you can even look up the song. It even has the lyrics. Most of them are on the internet. And so the consequence was they got destroyed, and he had a consequence for those. And here's what you do with these CDs. You drop them face down, usually on asphalt or concrete. It works real good. And then you step on them, and you twist, just a little turn like this. And if you live on a canyon, you pick them up, and you go, fing, We've had this happen several times, sometimes, I think there's one time like 7 CDs from his wonderful Christian friend. And the music in this thing, they're just terrible. I said, Dad, that's 70-something bucks with the CDs. Really? Bummer. So do you want to call the parents and tell them about it, or are you going to call them and tell them? And some way it got back to the parent that we destroyed this boy's CDs, and my son had to do consequences. And they called us and, oh, we're so sorry. Tell your son, don't worry about it. He doesn't have to pay him back because we don't want that in our house either. It doesn't bother me a bit. I don't care if he pays you back or not. If you want to pay him back, then he can work it out. But if it comes in my house, I don't care who brought it here, it gets destroyed. All his friends know that. So that was my personal rule. Now don't go home and go, all right, honey, we're going to go in my son's room and rip it apart. I did a parenting class here a few months back, somewhere around here. I better be careful what I say. Anyway, and it was a break, and I went into the restroom, and here's this guy sitting on the pot with his cell phone. Honey, I don't care. I don't care. We're going to tear all those posters are coming off the wall. We're going to rip. He's just going nuts. I could hear his wife on the other side just going, honey. He was just going nuts. I'm thinking, oh, that poor guy. Anyway, so don't go home and do that. Number 3, train them. You can stop when you become responsible adults or when you leave your home, whichever comes first. Many times kids will say, well, I think I don't need to be disciplined anymore. You just say, okay, I'll make you a deal. If you stay within the rules, I'll never discipline you again. Deal. You don't break a rule, that means you've got the character. Now you're bench pressing 200 pounds. You have responsibility, self-control, morals, and values. Deal. But if you break a rule in my house, you will be disciplined. That's the way it is. I'll give you some example rules. One of the rules we had on rule number 3 is, again, waking up in the morning. How many, I'm not going to ask you, don't raise your hand, but if you have a teenage kid here, and if you start going in there 2 or 3 times in the morning to wake them up, you're not helping that child. Give them an alarm clock. When my boys turned 8 and 9 years old, I gave them an alarm clock and said, hey, man, wake yourself up. Get up on your own, get yourself dressed, get ready for school. Don't go in there and have this fighting match. Give them an alarm clock. If they're not ready by a certain time, give them a consequence. The consequence could be, tomorrow you get into bed half hour or hour early. Plus you can do a discipline when you get home. Come up with some creative ways. How many of you have kids, teenagers, that share bathrooms in the morning? That can be hectic, can it? Here's what you do with that. Give them a schedule. You have from 6 to 6:15. At 6:16, you better be out of that bathroom. If you're not, you get a consequence. And maybe even get to the end of the line the next day. Fix it. That friction in the morning, she's in the bathroom, he's in the bathroom, she's in the bathroom, and that torment going on in the morning. Come up with a schedule. You get from 6 to 6:15. Well, that's not enough time. Okay, you get from 5:45 to 6:15. Okay? Fix it. Fix the problem. Curfew, I want to say this about curfew. The worst thing you can do is curfew is 10 o'clock. Don't set a curfew. Here's why. When you tell them 10 o'clock's a curfew, where do they want to be every night till that time? Out. And they think every plan they make, every one they make now, they've got till 10 o'clock. Don't set a curfew. If you want to go someplace, who you're with, what parent's going to be there, who's driving, and when you're getting home. And if the plans change, you better call me first and get permission. Every time you leave my presence, that's what's going to happen. And if it's 10 o'clock one night, 11 o'clock one night, 8 o'clock one night, okay, but make that determination then. Don't make a curfew. I encourage you not to do that. Come up with some ideas that you can, on who and location, things like that. And again, telephone privilege is one that's very, very important. We give you some additional punishment ideas. Saturday work, we explain that more in detail. And again, what happens when a son or daughter begins to refuse mom's authority if dad is not there, some motivating ways to help them to respond. Driver's license, as a parent up until 18 years old, if you have a teenage kid that has a driver's license, you can make a call to DMV and have your license revoked like that. So still in California, you can do that. Again, shut down, we give some more details in that. Chores are a powerful training tool and teaches your children some great work ethics. So it will instill character, the personal responsibility, and self-control. They're great training tools. 5 important ingredients for success in using chores correctly. Number 1, make them fair. Let me give an example. You have an 11-year-old girl that washes dishes 5 nights a week, and you have a 10-year-old boy that mows a 5x5 piece of grass once a week. Is that fair? No, it's not. A 10-year-old boy can wash dishes. So you got to sit down and say, what's fair? You know, if the girls are doing all this indoors work and you live in an apartment somewhere and the boy has nothing to do outside, that's not right. So you want to think about that. Be fair. And I'm really a big, strong one on kids learn how to do dishes and cook and those type of things. Really important. 2, make them age appropriate. You're not going to have your 8-year-old hopefully go out and wash your car unless you want that kind of a job, all right? So you got to be sensitive about, what they can handle. So make them age appropriate. Number 3, write them out. Just like the rules, chores need to be written. And number 4, within those rules that are written out, the chores written out, you determine by when they are going to be complete day and time. Let me give you an example. If trash needs to be out Wednesday night because 6 a.m. the trash truck comes. How many times have you had this, a kid comes home from school, hey, today's Wednesday, got to take the trash out. Hey, at dinner time, you take the trash out? No. You better do it right after dinner. Then you sit in front of the TV. Turn that TV off, go take the trash out. Wait till after the show, Mom. You better do it now. And you got this discussion going. Then you're at bed. I told you to take the trash out. You're going to get up tomorrow morning, you can do it. And then tomorrow morning, what are you doing at 5:45? So, trash must be out by 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Praise the Lord. Day and time. At 6:01, I will find your little mug. And I don't care what you are doing, short of being something very personal in the toilet or something. You are coming out, and you are going to do that right now. And on top of that, because you waited till 6:01, you're also going to do a consequence. Praise the Lord. I get more work for the same money. 6:01, at 6 o'clock, I want the trash out. Don't wait till 6 o'clock and go run out the door, because I'll let you go do it, but when you come back, girlfriend, you're going to get a consequence. You are getting a discipline. I want it done by then. Stop the arguing and the nagging and the threatening, and I'm going to take that away, and all the stuff that you attach to chores. A day and a time by. And 5 again, train, don't nag. Nagging is so wrong. We give you some examples. To chores, day and time by, and a consequence. The same concept. Let's talk about allowance for a moment. I'm a real firm believer of not tying allowance to the actual work. And here's why. We've had kids, when mom comes home with the groceries and she says, help me take out the groceries, they say, how much? Or dad has a special project around the house and they go, I don't have to do that. That's not part of my chores. How much are you going to pay me? Huh. I ain't paying you nothing. That's your rent, you know? So I encourage you, especially when they're younger, to think about how many hours of chores, that's a joke for most parents, but anyway, how many hours of chores that you give them in a week's period and come up with a dollar amount that you agree to. And you say, okay, I'm going to give you $5 a week because I love you. It's your spending cash. It's because I love you. Now, Nick burned a hole in his pocket. He always wanted cash. Always had something he wanted to buy. And so with Nicholas, he'd come, I want some money, I want to buy this. Okay, if you do this over here, I will give you X amount of dollars. I would tie dollar amounts to certain projects, if you can afford that. It's a good way where he can earn money over and above his normal chores. Justin, he could care less. And every dime he got, he saved. Nick was constantly, hey, Justin, don't you want this? Come on, let's buy this game. Come on, constantly, because Justin would save all his money. Nick, man, he'd get cash, it's gone. You know, so I encourage you on your allowance, be sensitive here. Now, not all kids will do what I said, you know, with trying to negotiate everything else with you. But when you do a special project, like when I have something going on around the house, I will warn my kids, hey, next Saturday, guys, we're going to spend from 9 to 10:30 or something. We're going to knock this project. I need your help in the morning. You know, warn them a little bit. If it's over and above their chores, I just tell them about it, let them know, and then that time they're out there helping me. Do I pay them for that? It depends how I feel. Sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. So it's important. There's no real rule of thumb. You can't look up, you know, John 4:19 says. Okay, I'm just giving you some common sense ideas and from working with a lot of kids. So you can work that out between you and your husband or wife. Again, some additional discipline suggestions here to give you some rules of thumb, some ideas, and some ways to be creative. But make sure, again, these were relating to the situation. Again, like phone. If I catch you on the phone past 9 o'clock, and that's one of the rules, the next 3 days you have no phone. No phone privileges, a related consequence. So in conclusion, as we've read several times in 2 Timothy 2:24-26, it says, and a servant of the Lord must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach patience and humility, correcting those who are in opposition, which our kids are definitely there. If God perhaps will grant them repentance, so that they may know the truth, and that they may come to their senses and escape the snares of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. In Ephesians 6:4, again, God tells us to train up our children with a gentle reproof. Clear, defined boundaries, clear, defined disciplines, and being consistent is so important. Your next pages here give you some blanks. Family rules and discipline. Now, you can have rules for your younger children on one page and consequences, and then have another set of rules for your older kids. And if you have a special child like Nicholas, who needs a homework time as part of a rule, that for Nicholas from 7 to 8:30 was homework, no TV, no phone, no nothing, because if I didn't set that time aside, he would never do his homework. Justin never had to have that rule. So because Nicholas had a hard time, following that, we had additional rules for him. Okay? And then we have a chore list. The same thing. Your next page also gives you, again, recommended devotionals for your discipleship books for your kids.